This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Geo Training. My name is Linda Smith. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I have actually been working with Brittenford for about 12 years now. Prior to being a consultant here, I did accounting just like all of you. I've been dealing with Solomon System, Dynamics SL, since way back when, for over 25 years now. So you could say I've sort of seen it grow throughout the years. And on that note, I'd like to tell you that we're going to be using the brand new SL 2011 Feature Pack 1. Just came out just a little while ago, so not everybody is up to date with this most current version. I won't be showing all of the different things that come with it, but I just wanted to show some of the highlights of the newer version of SL 2011. For starters, I think what I'd like to say is that, over on the left-hand side, this actually came out with SL 7, that you have a home button, and with that home button, you can actually create favorites. You can add things you go to a lot, things that you can actually that easier to get to. So one of the things I set up here was that, I have AP and GL. You can add like a menu and then add your different screens that you use a lot. One of the things also is that help is like on every screen. And some of the other things, well, of course, these groupings down here. I think what I'd like to do, though, is get into what I'm going to show you today, but I just wanted to point out a few things off the top of my head. All right. For starters, what I'd like to do today is first I want to show you some of the General Ledger settings, how you can customize the screen, some of the options that are new within General Ledger. I'd also like to show you how to set up a new GL account and Subaccounts. How we can enter, release journal entries, and then posting them, running reports, doing inquiries within the screen. So when you're trying to do research, trying to tie numbers down, easy ways to find data. And also want to show you how to do a period close. And with that, does anybody have any questions? Okay, I'm going to move forward then.
The presenter has muted the audience.
Okay, for starters, what I'd like to do is go over a little bit about the General Ledger. The General Ledger is the keeper of all the keys. Everything you do in all the other modules feed into the General Ledger module. So if you do something in accounts payable, you do something in accounts receivable or inventory or whatever, they all flow into the General Ledger. One of the things I mentioned was the help, just to understand within the General Ledger how everything is integrated. If I go to the manuals here, I can just show you that they've got all the different modules that feed into the General Ledger. You've got the AP, the AR, payroll, FRX can read out of it. You've got order management, inventory, project controller, and cash manager. So all of these things feed into the General Ledger, and then, of course, the General Ledger processes everything. So now that we know that everything comes into here, the next thing is to understand how, when you're going through, what sort of how is it set up? What are your General Ledger parameters? Within the GL setup screen, they do have some new features or some new things that are come with 2011 Feature Pack 1. For starters, one of the things to point out is some of you may or may not print your batch controls when you release your batches. One of the things they've actually come up with is that you can turn it off or on per module. So let's say you don't want to print out all your accounts payable ones or all your AR batches. You can say, I don't want to print those, but every time I do a journal entry, I want a batch control. So that's kind of a nice new feature that they didn't used to have. Another feature that they've added is under the posting options is another thing. Some of you may or may not have heard of something called hard close. Typically, you have a soft close within Solomon, but you can actually set it up now that you can make it so that it's not a soft close, that you can actually shut the door so that people can't release things after you've closed. So in here you're saying, you know, I'm allowing posted to close fiscal periods, or I can prevent that I don't want them to do that. If I uncheck this, I can also do it, well, in this case it's not letting me because I have unreleased batches, but when you're first setting up, you could possibly go through and say, I want to allow only certain ones to post, or to be allowed to post, which is a new feature. I think it was 2011 that actually came up with the, it was sort of, again, all or nothing, but I know that there's a third-party product that you could use that will shut it or make it a little more flexible. But with SL 2011, this is a feature that they have added. I'm going to go back to the option screen. Some of the things within the option screen are, like I said, the fact that you may or may not post and release your batches on release, which just means that when the batches come over from other areas or from, let's say, in either the GL, the AP, or the AR, that when they come into the general ledger, that they're actually waiting in the post-transaction screen. They are not automatically posted into the general ledger. This can be good if you have a bunch of people posting and you're like in the middle of trying to reconcile something. If you have it turned off, then you only release batches when you're ready to, especially if you're in charge of the general ledger and other people are, you know, posting into it. Or you could have, okay, I only want the general ledger to be allowed to do that. That way, you know, again, if you're the only one in charge of the general ledger, you can update it and whenever you release something. Or, as we say here, we just have it disabled so that whenever something is released, you have to then go into the post-transaction screen in order to post it. Some of the other things I'd like to point out, auto-referencing. Again, I don't know if everybody uses that. That basically means the system will create your deal reference numbers, or you could have that it doesn't do it or that it's optional. It's up to you. Most companies I know have the automatic one. That way they don't have to worry about what the codes are. How long you retain the information within the general ledger. This is really important because this can be when you're trying to clean up your general ledger, when you're trying to delete or get rid of, let's say you accidentally created something and then it was used like a chart of account or subaccount. If it's been used, this tells it how long it will keep that data before you can actually remove it from your system. So a lot of times when you're going, well, why can't I delete it? The reason why is because this has been set to retain, to keep it, because it had activity, even though it was possibly a debit in and then a reversal. Automatic reversing of journal entries, that's also another nice feature. Again, depending on what your company has. You can either have it that when you do an automatic reversal journal entry, and I'll show you that in a minute, that when you release it, either it sits there and waits until you close, or you have it set up that it will do an automatic reversal as soon as you release. Personally, I like that one better because then you know automatically, okay, I did it in this, in the current period or whatever period I'm posting it to, and then it would automatically reverse when I release it. And then some of the other things, multi-company, the general ledger will allow you to have multi-companies in the database. You can have multiple companies in a single database. You can also have centralized cache if you have multi-companies. I think that's kind of the big things I'd like to show on here. I mean, there's a lot of other tabs, but if you're already working in the system, they've probably already been set up and they aren't really going to change anytime soon. You know, your ending periods, how many periods you have, and these decisions were made when your system was initially installed. Okay. Any questions? What if it is a leap year? That is a very good question. All right. As we all know, once in a while, February has 229. So the two things you need to do is for your February period, whenever that may be, in this case it is period 2, I would want to change my date to 229 to make sure that it's included. But the other thing you have to concern yourself with is FRX. FRX does read from this table, so you may have to go an extra step to make sure that it reads the new 229 date. And again, that's for another class, but I just wanted to let you know that you could change the date here, but you may also have to deal with it with FRX. A very good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to move forward. All right, the next thing I'd like to show you is the how to actually set up a new account. Now, I'm going to make this big because there's a lot of columns to it, and I hope you can see it. All right, basically within the general ledger, the first thing before you ever create a brand new GL account number is you've got to logically think about where should it go, because you want to make sure that for your FRX reports and for everything else that you're doing, that it logically goes into your reporting the way you want to see it. So, you know, if you can look here, you basically have, you know, your cash accounts together, your due tos, your ARs. If you go further down, you know, your liabilities. So you want to logically figure out what's the best place to actually insert a chart of account or a new GL account number. One of the things that, let's say you're looking for something, you want to know if it even existed. One of the neat things that you can do in here, and with a lot of the screens with the inquiry, is that I can actually say, okay, I'm looking for an account number. I can type it. I'm going to type 6090, and if I hit the down arrow, it will let me know, it didn't exist. But if it did exist, and all I did was the down arrow, it would take me to it. So in this case, 6090 doesn't exist. Somebody may have given it to me and said, do this journal entry. In this case, I can say, it doesn't exist. Well, I guess I need it, and confirm that you do. And in order to set it up, you would, at that point, start going across the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, in this case, I'm going to add that I'm having a new rent for Linda. In this case, it's rent, so I know it's an expense. But if I click this down arrow, you can see the different types that it has. And this, again, goes back to the GL setup screen, that asset, liability, expense. You could have expense and income together into one. Again, I would say most people have them separated. In this case, mine is an expense. The next column over is your chart of account order. Again, that falls back to the same thing with the GL setup. And that it's grayed out, which means the system is going to put it in there for me. I don't need to add it. But when I save it, it will automatically populate for me. My class ID. A class ID is a way of grouping your accounts together. So when you want to run a report, you could say that my chart of account class ID is equal to expenses, and it would give me all of my accounts that have been set up that way, or revenue, or there's a whole listing of it. These are all user defined, which means your company comes up with their own. They don't come from the system. You don't even need them because they are user defined. But in this case, because this GL has them, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do an F3, and it shows me all the different accounts or the classes that are set up in this system. I'm going to pick expenses. The other thing is, of course, if you wanted to have a new grouping, you could even insert at that point, and it would open up the class screen, and you could add a new class for your chart of account. In this case, I'm just going to pick expenses. Ratio group, it's not used very often, but again, you can use them for, it's more like an FYI. They can be used for reporting. In this case, we can see that within the system, it's not being used very often, but they can be used. I think they're also used within bio and some of the analytical tools that go with the system. So in this case, I'm not going to put one. Of course, is the account active or inactive? In this case, of course, I'm adding it, so it's going to be active. But there may come a time when, because I'm creating this brand new one, I may want to inactivate another account. So, of course, active, inactive. That's how you would turn it off. Consol account is your consolidation. If you are using the have more than one company, let's say you have multi-company and you have different currencies, you can actually use this to say, what account am I consolidating with in another system? So I want to consolidate, in this case, the same GL account number, but you could have different ones. Unit of measure is typically only used when you're doing like inventories and such, but again, optional, it's not required. Currency is usually only used when you are when you have a multi-currency system and you want to designate which ones are different currencies. Again, it's not always used in the expense accounts, but definitely within cash and things like that. Posting in detail versus summarize all but GL. This can be very interesting. This system was set up so that when the AP posts, it summarizes. The only bad thing about that is it makes it very hard to investigate what was posted here. Although if you post in detail, it also makes your GL very large. So it's a consideration you have to have when you're first entering in accounts. They may be summarized in the beginning, and then you decide, oh, this is making it too difficult for me to try to find my data. You may then change it to detail, or the opposite. You may have so much detail going into an account, you're saying, oh, this is crazy. You know, if I want to look further, I can always go back to the original module, and then you would change this to summarize. It can be changed at any time. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of when the batches are released from wherever that is used as a GL account number, whether it should summarize it or post in detail. My personal one is post in detail unless otherwise needed. That way it just makes it easier to drill into things. But you'll see that further on when I show you some of the inquiries. Account category, I'm just sort of going to gloss over. It's basically used for project accounting, which is a whole nother set of modules. Basically, if you have something here, it just means that it will expect you to use a project and task. You will see that on a lot of the screens, but I'm not going to focus on that today. I just want to mention it. Same thing goes with requiring an employee and requiring the units. That would be for the project accounting. So that is how you enter a GL account number. So at this point, I'm just going to do save. And that's kind of, there isn't too much, unfortunately, else you can do on this. You can't really sort or anything like that. Some of the other screens you'll be able to. But at least you can see when I talked about, you know, if I type in a number, if I do the up arrow or down arrow, it will take me to where I want. Same thing here. If I typed in the word depreciation and did a down arrow, no, it didn't. Oops, excuse me, wrong screen. So you can do an escape if you do something like that. Okay, any questions on setting up a new GL account number? All right, I'm going to move on then. Oh, wait a minute. I may have a question. I was asked if you enter a description, does the account number come up? In the actual chart of account, Screen, no. But if I was in the journal transaction, I can actually do a sort, and this is a lot of the screens within Solomon. If you do your F3 and you're trying to find something, you could type in depreciation, down arrow, and it would take you to it, just like with, vendor name and so on. So just to show you, of course, I'm going to be getting to this in a minute, but if I was looking for an account number, and I know that one I just created had rent in it, if I did an F3, and then I click here, and I see how it sorted it in alphabetical order. If I type the word rent, down arrow, it takes me to the rent. Does that answer your question? Okay. All righty. So I showed how to set up an account number. Now I'd like to show you subaccounts. Subaccounts can be frustrating at times, especially if you don't set them up very often, and if your company has validations turned on. And what I mean by that is, within Solomon, you have SL Dynamics. You have the ability to set up your subaccounts to do what they call validations. So under Foundation, under your Flex Key definitions, you can actually look to see how your subaccounts are set up. And what I mean by that is if I go into subaccount, I did an F3, I'm going to pull subaccount. This company is set up to have 6 segments. It's set up to have valid combos, which means it has to be valid combinations of these different segments in order for me to add it. Okay? It also, if I go to the next level down, I am saying that this very first segment has got to be validated. And what I mean by validate is there's another screen, and I'm going to pull this open for you, that you actually enter in that has a valid number in it, or alphanumeric, that only from this list are you allowed to select it. Okay? So I'm going to come into the next table, my Flex Key table, and if I do the same thing, F3, pick subaccount, I'm going to pick segment 1, because based on this, my segment 1 says it has to be valid. So if I go to segment 1, this is my list of valid account numbers, or valid segments for segment 1. Okay? So if at this point in time, I try to go over to the subaccount screen within the GL, and I try to start my account number with something other than what's in this list, is anybody else having problems hearing me? I just hear that I'm cutting in and out. Okay. I show that I'm back to, is that better? It was, my network was, I'm pausing for a second while I read, sorry. I have that our audio was cutting in and out. It's in and out. Well, I guess, please let us know. I was focused on the screen. If it keeps happening, I may have to call back in, but hopefully it won't. Okay. Okay, so back to the screen. So subaccounts, when I'm trying to set it up, if I try to type in a subaccount that doesn't start with one of these, I'm going to get an error. And a lot of times, many times people have said that. So if I go into financial, if I go back to the general ledger, I go into subaccount maintenance, and if I, at this point, I'm just going to type in, okay, somebody told me I want BD all the way across. It's going to tell me item not found. The reason why is I started it with a segment or with a number that didn't exist in that list over in Subaccount. So if you ever get that where somebody says, hey, I need a new Subaccount, and you can't, you should come over to the Foundation, then Subaccount, or sorry, then Foundation, then Shared Information, and your Flex Key. So you want to go here and you want to go there and make sure that what you're looking for exists. So what I'm going to do is, now that I know what's valid, I'm going to come back into the General Ledger and I'm going to add a new Subaccount. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to go back to Foundation. I'm going to add a new segment, and then I'm going to go at it. Foundation, Flex Key Table. I was asked another question. Do I recommend turning on validation for all the segments? Honestly, I think it depends on your company. You know, in this case, you could have a table for each one. The reason why I would have them turned on is just so it stops people from creating subaccounts on the fly. I mean, if you at least do it so that the beginning subaccount is validated, then it sort of stops things from just occurring. But on the other hand, like let's say you have programs or you have grants or whatever that you need to make sure that only these ones are used. By having them validated, then you can at least go through and say, okay, these are the only subaccounts I really want to use, or I only want set up within the GL, and then be able to activate and inactivate in the subaccount screen. So I think it truly is a choice between whatever company you're working in. Then I was asked, what if you have 4 subaccounts, and in order to add, you want to make sure that the combination of them is valid? So the first thing you would want to do, I mean, you can always try typing it into the subaccount screen first, or you can do your F3, which was, I was going to add an 05 here, but if I do an F3 in the subaccount screen, for each segment, it'll show you what is considered valid. So if I went back into here and I went into my subaccount, I wanted to add a new one. So if I did insert, if I do an F3, it's going to give me each segment at a time. So that should allow you to pick what you want. Like I wanted to add 05, but I know I can't because it's not in this list. I can't start a 05 because I don't have it in my list. If I click this insert, then I can add to segment 1, 05, and call it training. Now again, I'm allowed to do this because I am the administrator. So now if I save that and I close it, there's my 05, and I can do the same thing. I can go through. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry, I'm trying to read as I'm so but what if AP is entering an account to pay a vendor and the account comes up as invalid? They can still proceed, or do they need to change what they've entered? If a GL account number or subaccount comes up as invalid, they should not be able to proceed. They're going to have to find out possibly it was turned off or inactivated. So you just want to be sure that if somebody if somebody codes something, an AP transaction, and they code it with a GL account number and subaccount, that truly is valid. But if you do the F3, F3 in pretty much any screen, it should give you what is valid and what isn't. Or if somebody tries to type it in, again, and it says it's invalid, then somebody should find out, should it be that subaccount? Do we need a new subaccount? Or did somebody just type, give you the wrong one? But invalid typically means that it doesn't exist at this point in time. Okay, perfect. All right, so in this case, I am going to continue just with zeros, just to make life easy. And I'm going to call this training. And at that point now, I have a valid subaccount that I can use And in this, again, it's active. So let's just say that, I've just created this 005, and this is where you can look at this, say, okay, I only want to see actives or inactives or whatever. You can come to this subaccount screen and see, does it really exist? I'm going to save this. I'm going to go Control Home to the tippy top. So let's say, like you just said, you were looking for something, and I had 05-100-0000001. If I do my down arrow, it doesn't exist. It wants me to create one. I said, okay, wait a minute, that shouldn't be right. I shouldn't have to create it. It should already exist or shouldn't, and so on. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, anytime you type down arrow, if it exists, it'll go to it. If it doesn't exist, it'll try to insert it. If you have the rights, should throw that in there. If you have the rights, it will ask you if you want to insert it. In this case, I don't. I'm just going to hit escape. Okay. So that's accounts and that's subaccounts. Wanted to show you also the reports. I keep talking about accounts, active, inactive, chart of accounts. A lot of times your company may have an enormous GL with, either a lot of subaccounts or a lot of GL accounts, but some have been turned off, or, you only use them year to year. Using the chart of account report can help you by looking for just actives and inactives. And I don't think, no, I didn't. You can actually look for where, and what I did here was under the chart of account. Well, first let me just do a print preview. This is the chart of accounts, and it shows you all of the accounts that have been set up and whether they're assets and the ratios, and here's the active, inactive. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, why can't I use an account, you could come in here and look at this report. Print preview, of course, is wonderful in that you're not wasting paper. You could also export it out using this functionality over here. I can say with SL 2011, it is different. It's a different crystal report than with SL7. So it looks a little different on this screen. Whereas before you had a little envelope to do an export, this is actually now this little button over here that in the far side where you can do an export. And I personally love Excel, so I would do my data only and export to Excel, and then I'd have my list and I could do what I want with it. So I just thought I'd throw that out to you. The other thing we can do is I'll show you later on how to actually use the select tab to pick things. But I did want to at least show you that you can run a report on the GL chart of accounts that will give you all of your accounts that are set up. And you can do the same thing with subaccounts. There's a subaccount listing right there. I was asked a question, what is the benefit of exporting data only? The difference is when you try to export into Excel, the options that you have, I'm just going to reopen that for you, is that if you do data only, you really only end up with the headers on one page, and you don't end up with a lot of extra little columns in the middle. It's just easier if you know you're going to be sorting and selecting and slicing and dicing and doing things with whatever you export. It's just easier than if you try to use some of the other options it gives you. The format, it would give you a column in between this one and this one and this one, and you end up with a lot of extra space you just don't even want. So it's more like if I'm just really trying to get the data to manipulate it in a different way, is the best way to put it. Did that answer your question? Okay, I'm waiting for her to finish typing. Okay. So some of the things, like I said, they do give you a bunch of different options here, but I personally like this one better because if you do try this, I mean, if I just said at this point that that's what I'm doing and exported it, I do have mine open. So if I tried to find that. It would just show that it's a really awful looking report where the data only is so much easier. And I don't know where that saves, so I'm not going to try that right now. Sorry. All righty. So that's the chart of accounts, the sub-accounts. Were there any other questions about setting up accounts or sub-accounts, running reports on what you can see for those only? Okay. I'm going to move forward then. So pretty much, we did the maintenance area. You can always, the other thing to mention is that, of course, you can always bring budgets or enter budgets into your system. There is a way to import budgets, which does make it easier than typing them all in. Just wanted to mention that is an option within the system. Okay, journal entries. This is my next one. But I may have a question. If we enter our budgets into the program side, yes, can they be sent to FRX? Absolutely. If you have a budget set up within your Solomon system, it's going to need its own ledger ID, and usually it's called budget, and a fiscal year, account, sub-account, and then you put in your totals by period or, however you want to do them. Then within FRX, you would just set up a column and point to that ledger ID, and it should read your budget. And we do have a lot of people that do that. And then you can do comparisons and so on. Hopefully. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move forward into the journal entry screen. This is basically the heart of GL. I mean, this is the keeper of where you would enter, all of your journal transactions. You can also use the screen with initialize mode to view other modules transactions. So sometimes if you have things that are stuck, if let's say you had an AP batch that you created and it was on hold and then somebody came along and inactivated a sub-account, you may need to use the initialize mode to open the batch in here and try to fix that sub-account or find the sub-account. I can say I have helped a lot of people with that, but I just wanted to put that out there that this is the place you can look at all. So I'm going to go through some of the highlights of this, and especially with it being SL 2011 as well. Some of the neat features are with the new version. I'm going to open number, if I do again, a number F3. I want to go to number 140. No. 39. Sorry, I thought I wanted, yes. Okay. With this journal entry, all I did was pick one that's already been posted. Okay. One of the new features with SL Feature Pack 1 is this little button right here. This is something brand new, and it's sure taken a long time to get here, but it's wonderful. In the old days, before this version, if you posted something incorrectly, you probably used Excel. You could copy and paste into Excel, flip your debits and credits, copy it back, or you may re-enter the whole thing. This is a brand new feature that you can actually go in, click, but it only can be once it's been released. So it's got to be an unposted or posted. It can't be its hold because, of course, at that point it's not really made it into the general ledger transactions. But if it's been posted or has an unposted status, you can come in here. We can either say, I want to reverse it, which would literally just take a copy of it and reverse it. And it's going to use the same period that was posted, but you can change it. Or I can do a reverse and then fix it, which again could be, oh, oops, I hit the wrong account numbers, so I reverse what I did and then put in the right account, sub-account that should have gone. Or lastly, let's say you have a payroll that you do every month. You could actually just copy the previous one. So I could just say, okay, you know, I want to copy this. If I just do OK, it immediately shows that I created a brand new batch, and here I am, a duplicate of the previous one. I can come in and just say, okay, well, you know, all right, my numbers changed, or, you know, it's only going to be $50,000. I can immediately change it. And no, I don't want to abandon. Oh, you want a project. All right. Sorry, it's yelling at me. I use a GL account number that wants a project and task, which I'm just selecting one. So now I've changed the dollar amounts, and I've changed this. I'll make this $50,000. At that point, all I have to do is change it and save it. So that's a new feature, only with Feature Pack 1, SL 2011 Feature Pack 1 that they have never had before. So it's a really nice new feature. Another thing about this, before I get into the rest of it, another feature that is brand new is these buttons up here. I can, with these, and I think it's 2011 that it came up with, you can either do a print screen of what you're looking at, or you could do a quick print, which would be sort of a GL edit of what you've entered here, which is nice, instead of having to save it and go into the GL edit screen, find the batch, do the print preview, all of that. So those are two nice features. Or you're having a problem, or you want to get approval, you just do a print screen. You can paste it into either, you know, Paint or, you know, an email and say, hey, does this look good? Can I post now? It's just another nice new feature that's out there. And this is brand new as well, Grid to Excel. So what this will do is, if I'm sitting here, you have to be actually in the grid for it to be green. So I'm going to come down here into the grid. If I click this button, it is literally making a copy. You see down here, it's blinking at me. If I open that up, I have exactly what was in the grid. What's really nice is if you have this really long journal entries and you're trying to figure out what's going on and something just isn't right and you can't figure it out, you can export it out, and then you can use the tools in Excel to try to figure out what's going on. It allows you to sort by, you know, with all of the, or not sort, I should say, select by everything. You know, I just want to see, okay, what's hitting that account number. It'll only show me those things. So it's really a wonderful tool to be able to sort and select or export it out and then, again, analyze it better. So I wanted to point that out to you. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And, oops. And I just, sorry, I did close the wrong one. There we go. Okay. So those are the two big features. The other thing I wanted to point out is, again, with people just starting out and not sure what's what fields mean what. You know, if I'm looking at a screen, I'm like, well, I don't know what to pick. This little blue button up here with the question mark, it will, if you click on it, it will take you to the exact screen that you're in and help you identify, okay, it's a journal transactions. It'll help tell you what it's for. It basically opens the manual for you. So if you're unsure what you want to put or unsure what a field means, you can come into here and it will actually allow you to view or to find out what it really is. So I just wanted to point that out because I do use it, especially when I'm unsure of, okay, what really should I have in this field. All right, that's it for the top. For the moment. All right, so I've got, as you saw, I did an F3. If I want to go backward and look and see, you know, what batches have been put through, what GL batches are sitting out here. Another nice feature. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was being asked a question. This little blue button way in the far corner, I don't know if you can see it, beside the company name, there's a blue circle with a question mark, and that's the help. And on every single screen, you should see that, the help button. Okay. So back to batches. So when I do an F3 on the batch list, it's going to show me any batches that are sitting that have gone through the general ledger. Let's say I'm trying to close, and sometimes you may get an error that says, not all you have unposted batches. You can actually come into this screen, and I can click on status. Like right now I can see I have some on hold, some are balanced, some are hold, but they should be all P's for posted unless you had something for the future, or U's for unposted. If I click on this status, I can actually see I have some that are balanced. Ooh, I have some that are on hold from 11. Wait a minute, what's going on? So it's a nice way, especially when you get to month end and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Wait a minute, I thought I did something. You can easily find a batch by just sorting on the status. That's one of the little tricks of mine when you're trying to do things. Some of the other things that go in here, if it came from another batch, and again, you're trying to find, you could probably sort. It won't let me sort backward. If I could sort it so that all of them were at the bottom, okay, I can see what batch they came from. No, I don't want to post that one. Okay. All right, so that was batch. Journal. Journal, you can, if you're entering in a brand new batch, so if I say at this point in time, I want to do a brand new batch, and I want to say, okay, you're not letting me. The journal can be, you can actually, within your company or what you're doing, you can kind of come up with your own codes. The standard ones are, AP or GJ. There is no F3. It's sort of a free form. Majority of the people just skip by it. But if you wanted to keep track of, let's say there was something you did, revenue, let's say, through a journal entry, you may want to create a journal that says RV. So that when you're looking on your reports and such, you can just say where journal type equals RV, and it would easily help you find those. As I said, majority of people probably just skip over that, but it is a nice feature if you do have things you want to group, journal entries that you do a lot of that you want to group together and be able to search on them later. And also, if your journal would be, like if my module was AP, it would be like AP type entries under journal. Type. When you print out a list, sorry, I just received another question. When you print out a list for the auditors of all journal transactions, will it show that you did a JE? Yes, it will say that it was the GL. It just won't have a journal type of JG. It may have a different journal type. So what you may want to do is when you're looking at the report, I'll show you later on. I'm going to show how reports are run. You would see that the module is GL, but the journal type might say RV and GJ. Will it have the person's name that did the transaction? No, none of the reports show who did the transaction. You would have to customize any of the reports to show that. Out of the box, standard GL batch reports for your GL details and so on. Is there a way to create a batch number with someone's initials? You could probably, under journal type, use somebody's initials if you wanted to keep track of it that way, yes. I've seen people do it under the reference number as well, make a combo of the people's initials and maybe the date or whatever's going on. Reference number is typically a free-flowing journal. You can type your own. It's not normally automatic number. So, sorry, I've got another question. Next question, I'm coming from Great Plains where you can create your own batch number. So I'm wondering if that exists. No. Batch numbers are definitely auto numbering within the system. You can set it up so that each module has its own set of numbers. Like you could say that the GLR starts with 1 and AP will start with a 3. But because they all go into one table called batch, it has its own batch numbering system. So I just thought I'd let you know. And I was also asked, so you could use ref number to personalize it. Yes, you may use ref number when I'll show you when I get down here that this is free form, or it could be set up that you have auto numbering, but the majority of the people, I don't think I've ever seen ref number in the GL be auto numbering. The only auto numbering reference numbers are typically in AP, AR most of the time. But in the journal entry, it typically is a free form. Okay. Okay, so on the screen, I wanted to show you type because there are a bunch of different types of entries that you can make within the GL. 95% of the time, I'm going to say that you're going to be using non-recurring, which means I'm just doing an entry. And then, I'm just posting. But I'm going to go down the list just to let you know. So the first one I show here is adjustment. Adjustment is typically only used when you're starting up. Again, you're coming from another system and you're starting to use Element and you need to make some sort of adjustment to get your balances in there. It is very rarely used because in the GL, you should have debits and credits. The thing about adjustment is it will allow you to do a one-sided entry, but that is not correct accounting. You should have debits and credits. So it is rarely used, but it does exist. Just thought I'd let you know. You also can have an allocation batch. Typically, these allocation batches are created from within General Ledger. You have a way of setting up GL allocations. So it would create a batch over here and would call itself an allocation batch. Same thing with the consolidation. That would be like if you exported the consolidation out and then you brought it in, it would say it was consolidation journal entry. Manual. Manual is kind of a neat one because manual means it's kind of almost like a template. What it's saying is that I can create an entry that will be used over and over again. Again, going back to the payroll one, let's say I created a manual journal entry. If I go into, I think it was 00130. No, it wasn't. Sorry, I thought I had it written down. 142. That was a reversed one. If you do a manual journal entry, it will show manual, and if you click on that, you pull it up, and then it will fill in the screen, almost like that copy. You can then edit it and release it, and what will happen is over here it will show that it was originally created from that batch number. So in this case, this was actually a reversing one. I had batch 130. It was reversed, which we created number 142. So it's sort of using a template, which is, again, a whole other way of doing things. Let's see, I was told that the database does store the name of the login username. If we go back to, can you say who created the batch? The database does keep the creation user, date and time, as well as the last update user, the last update and time, and those can be added and customized. The screens can be customized to include those things, and so can reports. Thank you, Shireen. Okay, sorry, I got sidetracked again. All right, so I pulled up this journal entry. I was discussing, let me go back to a brand new one. So I'm just hitting escape. Oops, not escape. And new. That was another thing I guess I haven't shown you. Up at the top, these little icons, if you've been using the system for a while, you may or may not know about them. So I'm just going to go through them real quick. This little one that I just clicked on gives me a brand new blank sheet of paper, brand new item. The one beside it is my save. Beside that is cancel. So it means I didn't want to do what I did, or escape. That's my hand one. X is delete, but it will ask you, are you sure you want to? And then this one will finish and start a new one. And depending on what screen you're in, it will also ask you what is it you want to, quote unquote, insert next. This one is used a lot in accounts payable, especially because you can like save a voucher and start your next one for your batch.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back down to here again. Sorry. Your next one is recurring. And, of course, the last one, non-recurring, I sort of said you do one time. You know, I'm doing it, but it's sort of a one-time thing. And then, of course, recurring is a nice one because with recurring, let's say you have you prepay your rent every month. So I did my voucher, I posted to prepaids in AP, I cut my check, I pay it before the 1st, I get it out the door, but then I want to take it out of prepaids and I want to put it to expense. Well, instead of every month trying to remember, oh, did I do my journal entry for that? Did I do it? You can actually set up a recurring to move it out of prepaid and into rent, or amortization schedules or depreciations, same kind of thing. You can set it up to have a recurring that you can just sort of review, edit as needed, and then release, and you don't have to physically type them in every time. So I'm just going to show, I'm going to say this is my period. I'm going to do, release later. My ledger, in this case, I use 000. Most people have actual. This is the actual ledger that I'm posting to. Current cycle and number of cycles. This is where, for recurring, you have to kind of make the right decision as to what you're doing. If it's rent, amortizations, things like that, your number of cycles or your current cycle means how often a month is this going to happen. In situations like that, it's probably going to be a 1. But let's say you have payroll. You may want to set up a recurring journal entry that does your payroll. You could have it go twice a month or every week. So that would be like a 4 if it was every week. So current cycle means how often a month I'm happening. Number of cycles is how long do I want this to occur. If I have rent, or I'm amortizing something, I could, have it go out 5 years, 6 years. I could put in 96, or 60. That way, for the next 60 months, this is going to recur for me until I remove it. So if I wanted to enter in that I've, a $5,000 rent that I amortize every month, and you could even do a whole bunch on one. You don't have to have a single journal entry per. If you have a bunch that all have the same kind of scenario, you could put them all on one journal entry. Said, okay, all of these are one journal entry for me. But in this case, I'm just going to do a rent one. So I entered in that 6090 account earlier. I entered in my 05 earlier. Now, here's my reference number. I'm just going to call rent expense. As you can see, it's just whatever I type. I could do LS, rent, EXP. So you could do what you wanted by entering in somebody's initials if you wanted. I think it's up to 10 characters in that field. The date is going to default to the business date, the current computer's business date. Now, let me forewarn you. If you use Cash Manager, this date is imperative to be within the posting period, or it will not flow correctly. Not everybody uses Cash Manager, but I just like to throw that out there because just skipping over the date can be deadly in other areas. So I'm just throwing that out there that my database is set up for 12/1999. I want this date to be that and not today's date. I'd rather put in 12/31. Oops, I almost put in 2012, 1999. That way I know that my date is with my period. Now, if you don't have Cash Manager, it may not matter. Some people may have it that they want to use the date as today's date because then you know when you did it. But as I said, if you have Cash Manager and you're posting to cash, you really want to make sure that date is the date within the period. Because we don't have a project or task, this is not associated to projects, it jumped immediately over employee, labor, billable. It goes to quantity, but I'm doing rent. I don't have a quantity. I'm going to put in, I want to debit my expense for $5,000. It's Linda rent, 12. Okay. I hit enter, went to the next line. This is going to be 1310. Again, if I'm unsure, this is where if I did that F3 and I said, I don't know, wait a minute, what's that account number? If I put here and I put that's if I could spell, I put prepaid and I hit a down arrow, I've got a bunch of different ones. I can say, oh, wait a minute, here's prepaid rent. Why am I putting it to that one? It should be this one. So it's just another way of helping you see, identify what you really want to post to and if it's correct or not by doing the F3 and looking. I say, okay, I'm going to leave the same sub account. No, I don't want. Now, see, in this case, I've got an 05 to a balance sheet account. So you want to be careful about that also when you're doing your journal entries. Majority of the people use zeros unless you're grant accounting or some projects. Majority of the time you do not want to default to the sub-account that you would use on an expense. But as you can see here, it defaulted from the line above. So before I just jump over it, I go, wait a minute, is that really what I want? No, I probably just want to use my zeros account. And then I would enter across. Now, so that's another thing to be careful of when you're doing journal entries. A journal entry to fix. You could do a reversal and fix it. Okay, so at that point in time, I've entered all the way across. If I save this, I've got release later. At that point, I can go in. This is number 148. I'm going to close the screen. I just want to show you the GL edit. And this is, again, I'm going to get into it a little further, but the select tab within all the reports is probably the most powerful thing and most confusing thing to help you with identifying stuff. I'm going to get into it a little further. At this point in time, I'm just going to use what I know is the batch number. So if I do an F3 again, I'm looking for batch number. And I just know that BAT NBR is batch number. I'm going to say, okay. I'm going to do my equals 000148. And this is probably the hardest screen, the sort select and understanding fields and understanding what to put in here when doing reports. So here you can see I entered my thing. It's balanced right now. I've got, one cycle. It's going to go for 60 months. I'm using the right GL account numbers. Everything looks good. So I should be able to release it. And then from here forward, I can actually do recurring journal entries. Okay, so I'm going to go back in there and pull that back up. It says it's balanced. Handling is another thing sorry that I skipped over. I apologize. There are basically three real handlings that you can do when you're entering. You can leave it on hold, which means I'm unsure what I'm doing, or I'm not sure I want to release it yet. So I just want to hold it until I get confirmation that this is what I should do. You can do a release later, which means I'm releasing it. I just don't want to wait for that, for it to go through the posting process and all of that. I have too many to enter right now. I just want to release later and move on to the next one. Or release now, which will, as soon as you say I'm done, it will release it and it will send it into the account history tables. It will send it to the general ledger transaction tables. It is at that point sent to the post screen if you have it set up that you don't post automatically. But basically you're saying, I'm done. I'm ready. I want to do this right now. So if I change this to release now and I do this little save, it should at that point go to my post screen. So I want to show that next. So down under process, so we just did the journal entry. I've done a journal entry. Now I'm going to go through the different processes that you can do within the GL. I guess before I do that, does anybody else have any questions at the moment? Or I jump to the next section. Okay, looks like we're doing good. All right, so at this point in time, I've done my journal entries. I'm going to go into release GL batches. For everything that I put in with release later, they come over to here and they're waiting for me to actually release it to say, yes, okay, fine, you may update. Remember I mentioned that you may want to have that if you're in the middle of reconciling and you don't want it to post right away, or because you don't want to release a whole bunch. You'd rather release all of them at once versus one at a time. This is the screen you would come in. You can do, I'm just going to say select all, or I can just pick which ones. Like if there's a list here, I could just click, 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 and then just do begin processing. What this will do is it will update the batch from being B for balanced to U for unposted or P for posted. It depends on what period you're posting to. In the GL, typically it will be, unless it's in the future, it will typically be a posted. Or if you have it set up that you want to go into the post-transaction screen, then where it says it's disabled that you will post automatically, then you need to go in there. So what I mean by that is if I close this and I go into my post, I can see I have, no, I don't like it. I'd rather do this. I can see that I have a bunch of transactions sitting in here. Here's a batch that I just released, but it's waiting to be posted. I have an inventory batch that has not been posted, and I have purchasing batches that have not been posted. I only want to post my journal right now. I mean, I'm working with the GL. I'm not worried about inventory and purchasing at this point in time, so I am going to just clear all. I just want to pick my one little batch, and I'm going to begin. So at that point in time, now I should be able to look for my postings in all of my different reports. Hold on a second. I have a question. So even when you do a normal journal transaction, it has to be posted after being released. If you have it set up in the GL setup screen that you do not automatically update, this thing right here, post on release, if this is set up to disabled, then yes, you must post. If it's set up as GL only, it means that you're allowed to release and it will automatically update for you. It truly depends on how your GL setup screen is set up. And it's company to company. It really matters. It depends on what they prefer to have. And I couldn't say what it's probably half and half. I think it depends on the size of the company. If I had GL only, it means whenever I released it would update. You know, you could be, all these other people are doing their work in the AP and the AR and whatever, but you are in charge of the entire GL. You may want to have it update for you only. It's a choice of the company. But as you can see, it can be changed very easily if you have the rights to the screen. Okay. Alrighty, so now I've done a journal entry, I've released the journal entry, I've posted the journal entry, so now I wanted to show you, I'm not going to get into closing yet because I wanted to go through some of these other things first and then I'll get back up there. One of the most powerful things that I find is this account subaccount inquiry and the account history inquiry screens. The reason why I say this is you can actually review and drill back to the actual transaction that occurred. So we know again, I'm hitting the exact same accounts that I'm kind of going. I just posted that journal entry. So if I went to 90, yes, 05000s for 1999. Oh, I did a recurring. Sorry, I missed one step. I need to generate my recurring. Here's my 148 that I did. I need to actually generate it so it creates a batch that I can now research. So I'm just going to click on this. If you wanted to review your recurrings, you could actually come down and there is a report to view them. To be your GL edit, looking for it. So if I do a begin processing, I say okay. I go back into journal transactions. And you can see here's my $5,000. It's non-recurring now. It was from 148. So now if I go into where I wanted to go, which was my 05, my inquiry screen, I'm going to start with history. 6090, 05, fiscal year 1999. Now I can see here's my $5,000. If I click on this details button, it actually opens up the account history detail screen. If I click on this one, it's going to show me the details. And then it takes me back to the journal entry. I want to go back to the account history. I was asked if I could use wildcards in the sub-account so that it pulls only associated account. You would actually use, instead of this screen, you could use this screen, account summary. And if I put in just 6090 and I do my actual ledger and I click display, it would list all the different accounts and sub-accounts. So if I had 6090 but I had different sub-accounts, it would list them there. But again, every time you see a details button, you should be able to click details. It's going to open up the next one. Then I say, okay, that's the one I'm looking for. Click details. And it will drill all the way down to, and I click on that one, and I click details. And will take me all the way back to the actual journal transaction. You can do that with the AP, the AR, the GL. I think those are the integrated ones you can drill back into. You cannot, there's some that you can't drill back to, and I'm pretty sure the financial ones is the only one you can actually drill to. And Shireen gave me a helpful hint and said, if you click Shift F3 in the account history screen, it will pull up a lookup screen with the valid options. So I need to go back to my account history, which was here. So you said, so you can see that it's got the account, sub-accounts. So that's sort of what, when you were asking about the wildcards. Did that answer your question? I also wanted to show you this one, which I use an awful lot of, especially if I'm trying to balance my AP aging to, you know, my AP account or my cash or something like that. You can come into this, let me get the right cash account. It's 01. Sorry, where did it go? There it is. 01100 AA 00000. Oops, 1. And let's say, I can actually pull up more than one period. I can pull up an entire year. If I click display, it will show me everything that has been posted to this account, sub-account combo. It's going to do it by period. It's going to show me by date. And then I've got, see where it says summary by release? So that isn't going to help me much because at that point I can't really tell where to come from or what makes up that dollar amount. You know, I've got $179,000 that was deposited. I know it's a summary and it was my dollar amount. I've got my batch, my reference, my AR. But at that point, if I click here, it takes me to the payment screen. So I can say, okay, well, now I can look over on this side in the AR and try to figure out, okay, what exactly made up this batch. So I really like that feature. The other thing I like is you can sort on any of these. As I click, it's sorting it. So I've got adjustment first, or if I'm looking for a certain dollar amount, if I sort on amount, I can say, okay, I've got a negative 40 here, and I could say, oh, well, there's my positive 40. Okay, those two wash. And here's my negative 1,000, here's a positive 1,000. Okay, do those two wash? So that kind of thing. So it really helps with trying to investigate what's going on in an account number. And the fact, just like I said, the other thing is the fact that you can actually drill back to the screen. So, you know, at that point, if I can click into here and say, oh, okay, what else was I doing in that journal entry? It looks like someone was cleaning up things or whatever. So I consider this one of my most powerful screens. That this is the account history. The account sub-account. When you drill into an account or an amount account, can you see the offset account? Well, as in like this journal entry right here, okay? I went in and it showed me the journal entry. So yes, I can see here's my 1,000 and the offset of it looks like 1190. So then at that point I could probably look at 1190, 03440, blah, blah, blah. Or actually it looks like, and that's the right one. No, it's this one. Because here's my 01. So it's 1190 is the account. So I'd probably drill into the 1190 and see, okay, is it still there? Especially if you're trying to unravel something. And you can look to the offset and then say, okay, does the offset still have it? As I said, I consider this a very good tool for investigating. All right. So that's inquiry screens. Okay, a couple other things I forgot to mention looking at my notes. Let's say you have a journal, you have the journal transaction, but you have it turned off that you're not printing any reports, but your boss says, you know, or you need to figure out, you need to print something up because somebody's requesting a copy of what you did. Besides this, the print screen, you can actually do a reprint of the batch control, and you can print out, you know, a range. You can print out just the one you just did. If, let's say you only need to keep copies of, again, payroll for some reason. You want to put it with your payroll book. You can do an F3. You can pick the number you want, which I know it was 00148 was the last one I did. No, 149 was the last one I did. I could say I want to display it, select it, and then if I do begin, it will print to my printer wherever I have it set up. So if you have it turned up that you are not printing, but you want it to print, you can do a reprint of the batch control. This is available in the GL, in the AR, in AP. So again, with having it turned off, this is a nice option that if you do need to print it out, you can. All right, let me make sure. I just want to make sure I copy everything for you. Another thing I just wanted to point out that since we're all accountants, we all love Excel, you can easily set up just a simple format that you can actually copy and paste it into the screen. I kind of go back to payroll. You're trying to balance. You're trying to do your debits and your credits and so on. You know, with Excel, it's so easy to say, okay, my debits equal my credits. But you can easily set it up that you can have your account, your sub-account, your reference, you know, the date. You just do, you know, an update of the date. And when you're done, or like in this case, I was doing an Amex bill, you know, I got all the numbers going down, and then I just have one. I can just do a whole copy and paste into that journal entry screen. It just saves me a lot of work if I balance it ahead of time versus getting to the bottom and saying, oh, great, my debits don't equal my credits, and what I miss. Or the same thing goes. You can copy and paste it back down to here. You know, it's easy enough to do. With that grid to Excel is one way. You could also, another trick would be just to have that same, I click right here. It highlights everything. Although, like I said, this will do it for you, but even in the older versions, you can do this Control-C, open Excel. I just pop over to here, and I do a Control-V, and there I go. So, again, that's, knowing that you have the ability to do it does help with work. Okay. Are there any questions at this point in time? All righty. I am going to close journal try. Yes, do I want it? Okay. All right. So I've gone through, you know, setting up an account, a sub-account, journal transactions with recurring entries, releasing your batches, posting your batches. The last thing I'd like to go over is your reports. The different reports that can use for, again, just like the sub-account inquiries, but actually printing reports. Majority of the people, when they're looking for stuff, you know, you're running either your detailed GL report or your GL transaction report. The different trial balances also ran, but usually that's when your last thing is when you're actually getting ready to close. The biggest difference between the two reports, the detailed GL and the GL transaction, is that detailed GL report is typically sorted by account, sub-account, grouped by period, then by account. So like if all I did was open this report without looking for anything in particular, and I did a print preview, this would be anything that has been posted, it can't be unposted, posted to the period 12 of 1999. So if I'm looking at this report and I'm just looking at page 1, what I'm seeing here is that for my cash account with a sub of 000, nothing has occurred. I have no transactions. I got a beginning, 000, and an end. If I go to the next one down, again, it's cash, but my sub account now is 01-100 AA, yada, yada, yada. You can see that I've got AP. The transaction was checks. I have a batch number. I had the period that it was entered. I had the reference number, which in this case is the check number because it's a check. When did it occur? And again, here's where that summary can say, okay, I did a batch of checks, but that's all I know, versus the post in detail that I mentioned earlier. Here's a journal entry. Here's that GJ that I had mentioned earlier. Like if I had put in RV or LS, that's where it would show, and then it would show it was done in General Ledger. Again, going across. So here I am. I'm looking at my report, and I'm going, okay, well, all right, I see what happened. I'm flipping through. These are all journal entries. But what if I'm looking for something in particular? I'm trying to figure out, one of our employees, we cut a check, and I'm trying to figure out where did it post to? Or I just want to see one GL account number versus all of them. Two things. One, way over here on the left-hand side, hopefully everybody can see, there's this little plus sign. If I click on it, it actually shows me by ledger, by my assets, my liabilities, and my income, and then under each one of those, a GL account number. So that's one way of jumping to the account you want. Or we could use that select tab. And that's where you have to pick the field that you want to use in order to print the report. So again, if I go to my good old expense of 6090, I can go all the way down. There it is. If I click on it, it takes me to it, and here it is, my rent for Linda that I posted. Here's my $5,000. And that's one way of doing it. Or I can close this, and I've already set this up, but I'm going to show you that, and you may have these already set up at your company. They're called templates. It's basically, it remembers the fields that you need in order to run a report. You can do where your sub-account equals. Basically, if there's a field on the screen, it's a field, you can select it, typically. So in this case, I'm going to take this template. I'm just going to do select by account. I'm going to load my template. I'm going to click on report, which says, what report am I running? What format do I want to run? And again, you may have customized reports, so you may want to verify that. What period do I want to look in? I'm just looking at my 12 right now. Sort, I'll get back to. Sort, you can actually, this is the way the report is sorted. You can use this to sort in different order, but I'll come back to that. Next one is selecting by account. So in this case, I'm looking for, and I know it looks really confusing to see this, the field, if we kind of look at it backwards, ACCT means account. The next section over says account hist, which means the account history table. And then whenever you see a V in the beginning, it means it was a view, which means that programmers have created like a selection criteria that just grabs like fields to write this report. So if you disregard the beginning of that and you just kind of look after the period, so in this case, if I disregard VR over to the period, account underscore hist account to me means the account history, account, GL account number. My operator in this case is I'm just looking for one GL account number. So I would say equal. But the nice thing when you were talking about wildcards is this, you could use this here. You could say my account begins with 6, or my sub account begins with 05, or so it really it's a combination of field plus this plus that equals what you're going to see. I'm going to use equals, and then my 6090 that I've been using all along. I said okay, and then I do my print preview. I'm going to get the one thing. And you can see here I've got, that was journal entry, I got my period, I got my sub-account and my account. Okay. I want to show you, I want to do that 1030, which, this is cash. Let's do a print preview on cash. So I can see that 2 different sub-accounts were used here, right? So I got that one, and in the middle I've got that one. Well, let's say I don't want it to break. I just want to see anything and everything that hit cash. I could actually come over to here under options. I can say I only want to print ones with activity. So that very first one that didn't have anything, it's not going to print this time. I could say that I don't want to have per period. So now all I want to see is by the account how much money it was. If I check those two things and then I do a print preview, it's an easier to read report, again, depending on what you're doing, but it might be easier to read if you use those options to uncheck them so that before your print preview. And again, if you like what you see and you have to do more work after you get it down to here, you could export it out. I want to show a couple things that I consider cool. You can actually look for, like I was talking earlier about the employee, right? If I do load this template, I know that the GL, again, disregarding the VR, my GL transactions, underscore, tran description, transaction description, can contain something. It can begin with. It can, again, depending how all your other things are set up, you could be looking for one particular vendor. You could be looking for one particular word. In this case, I said it contains E01184, which is a vendor ID. So I can see any place, any GL account number where this description, it contains this description. If I do a print preview, shows that we cut a check. Or I did a voucher, sorry. I haven't done a check. Here's my voucher, AP. It was a voucher. It went to the AP account, and it went to commissions. Let's say we wanted to look for me, because it contains Linda, right? Now we've got what I did. My rent came through. So it's really, this is another way of trying to find data when you're trying to investigate what happened in the general ledger, what came over from everywhere. You're just trying to figure out, what was posted. I want to show you a way to figure out what these fields are. If you can disregard the VR part and you just look at GL tran description, okay? Under help, I'm not using this one because this is going to give me just this screen. I'm going way up here to this one, to the help in the top. I do help topics. This will open up the entire contents of every help there is for within the SL system. At the very, very bottom is this thing called a schema. And what the schema will do is allow you to look at the tables and try to figure out what field to use. So here's financial. And we were looking at the GL transactions. So if I go through my list here, and I go down, and I go to GL transaction, this is every field. Now this is kind of advanced, but it at least gives you an idea if you're trying to find something and you've entered it into the screen. It'll help you try to identify what you're doing, like DR amount, I know that I debited something. Oh, DR amount is what I want. It equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just a nice way of being able to look at what makes up the tables where things were posted in order to run a report. So that's under help, schema, and you can look it over. So that's the detailed GL report. Trying to think if there's anything else. The options, sorting again. You kind of have to understand, but knowing that it's going to do account and then sub-account. I've seen people put the sub-account above the account, just by moving it up so that it's above account, and then do my apply. And then my print preview, it's going to show me by sub-account, by account. It's not giving me. Oh, do I have my select? I have my selection still in there. I was like, wait a minute. Let's try that again. Sort. Okay. So now, if I look at this, there under my, see, I've got 00001. So if I click on here, I've got all my 01030, and then it shows me all the other ones that hit that sub account, and then it jumps to that one. So it's just little tricks of things of trying to locate data. And with that sort, you're not hurting anything, you're not saving anything, you're just doing it for this click around. So this time that I had the screen open is when that sort, if I close that screen and reopen it, my select isn't going to be there, my sort isn't going to be there because I didn't save it as a template. I was just looking at this point in time. Any questions on that? Okay. I do want to show you the GL transaction report. As part of the GL closing, there's some things that you should probably look at. You know, there's steps that you should perform. The GL transaction report can be very helpful, especially if, you know how we looked at the post screen and it had things in here that were unposted, and I didn't want to post them because I didn't know what they were. If I run my unposted report, like you could have AP batches, let's say, that came in, or AR, and you're like, well, wait a minute, is it going to affect what I'm doing? Maybe I shouldn't post them yet. You can actually run this unposted report, GL transaction, unposted, and it will show you what GL account numbers are going to be hit and what actually makes up those numbers. So you can go through and say, oh, okay, oh, this is, hey, I was waiting for that, you know, or I need that batch to post. I need to ask so-and-so about the other ones. It at least lets you know what's sort of waiting in the wings, as I call it. So it could be very helpful. It could also be very helpful if, you know, you can't find something. You can run this into the future. This is not right now. It's looking at just this period. You know, I've had where people have said, well, it keeps saying I have batches that haven't been posted, but I can't find them. Because you're allowed to post to the future, you can actually look for it in the future. So I could say 12, 2013. I'm probably going to get the same thing, but it would show me by period, each batch and where it was posting. So the other thing you can run, that's unposted, you can actually run a posted report. So just like the GL transaction report, you can run this report, but this report is actually sorted by batch. So if I wanted to come into my select screen, you know how the other one had the VR or whatever, this one does not. This is pure tables, so you're not seeing the VR underscore. You're just seeing account dot with a field. I go down, account. There's my GL transaction, which again is the place where everything goes. So if I wanted to look for my GL tran batch number is equal to my 000149, which is the one I know I released. There's the batch that was released with that batch number. And the same kind of thing goes with this. If I'm the same, looking for a description, GL tran, I know my tran description. Tran description contains Linda, and I do a print preview. Again, there's my batch. So again, I know I used the word Linda in it. I should be able to find it. I think those are pretty good with check numbers. I mean, there's a lot of different things you could look for with these reports. Okay, that's the transaction report. The closing the period. There are a lot of different procedures that companies have. I'm just sort of going over a generality of how you would close your month. Typically, you want to make sure all your modules are closed first. You want to be sure that your AP has, its aging ties to the GL account number for AP. So you print your periodic aging and you tie the dollar amount out to your GL dollar amount. If they're off, then you investigate. You do the same thing with accounts receivable. So, if you run a periodic aging and you compare it to your GL balance and make sure they balance. One way of checking the balances, I've seen it probably more with AR than AP. You may have more than one AR account. If you run your trial balance report, again, I'm just doing a preview to make it easier, and say, okay, oh my, all right, well, I have AR, I have 3 AR here, here's 2 ARs up here. Well, they're both the same GL account number. I add those 2 numbers together, or with the same kind of thing as I've done with all the other reports, I could do where account number equals 1110, right? And then I'd say, okay, now go run my aging report. Do I balance? Yes, no. If I don't, then I start digging. Okay, what happened on one side? What happened on the other? What happened in accounts receivable that somehow isn't in the general ledger? Once you're sure that those are balanced, the other thing as part of that closing process, again, I know we're not going over the modules, but it really does affect the GL, is that you make sure that all of your batches have been released. So over on this side, you've got an unreleased batch report, or you can run a batch register report, and you can go through and say, all right, has everything either an unposted or in the future? If it's on hold and it's in my current period, well, should it have posted? Shouldn't it have posted? So once you're sure all of your modules are okay, then you want to do the same thing in the general ledger. So you want to make sure that they're all done. You can do the same thing. I can do my batch register. If I do my print preview, maybe. Oh, that's my trial balance. Wait a minute. Sorry. My batch register. This one gives me every batch, whether it's been posted. It's a little more detail than I personally like. I like the roll-up because it's easier to look at. So I would change this to summary. And as you can see, you can just click down. And if ever you run a report and you don't like what you see, you always should come under Report tab and click the down arrow. There might be other ways, other reports that someone has created. So in this case, I know there's a summary. So if I do the down arrow, short and sweet, what batch was done? Is it posted? What's the status? What period is it going to? And, the dollar amount. So if I come down, further down, I know I've got a hold here. I probably want to go out there and look at it and say, well, why is that on hold? Oh, that's right. It's a recurring. I don't care. I'm okay with that. But at least it gives you a quick way of looking. You could also set up a template that says, only give me the things that are not equal to P. And that would give you your holds, which means I haven't decided what I want to do. My balance, which means I need to release. I just haven't released them yet. Or your use, which means the GL has not posted me yet. Okay, next, so you're going to reconcile that. You're going to run your reports. You probably should be running your, when you run your trial balance, you want to make sure your assets equal your liabilities, your year-to-date equals your income and expense. I also wanted to show you there's 2 different versions of this. Combined totals takes your debits and your credits and merges them together. whereas debits and credits shows how much debits there were, how much credits there were. Again, if you're trying to reconcile, this one's probably easier to look at, but if you're tying to FRX, you may want the other one. I'm just going to run this one because it's not run very often. The same as I keep going over to here. What's nice is I can click and it will take me to the end. So if I click on liabilities, it takes me to the end really of assets and the beginning of liabilities. So I can see it's 62,550. I do the same thing here. I got 62,550. Good, we're in balance. And then year-to-date is going to be more difficult because it's all those numbers added together, but you should be sure that when you add them all together that it equals the very end, which here can go there, should be the 12 million. You can compare this to your FRX report that you should have, one out there, a basic one, that you can tie back. Make sure you're not missing any accounts or sub-accounts in it. Or Management Reporter, which is the new FRX, quote unquote, is taking the place of FRX in the newer versions. We're still allowed to use FRX, but they are migrating in that direction where it won't be supported. But I think that's a few years from now. Okay. So I would review that, review it to your trial balance. If for some reason something is off, you can compare the trial balance, which is considered the top level, it's the roll-up, to your GL detail report, to your unposted report. This should be the balances of the accounts. The GL detail will tell you what makes up those accounts. You can use the inquiry screenings to, again, dig further back. You can always go back to the modules once you know where it came from. You can go into AP or whatever and look things up. Sorry, I'm still reading my notes, making sure I get everything. And then, of course, everything balances the way it's supposed to. You're really done. You really should make sure that your IT department has been backing up your database. It should be happening on a nightly basis. That's our preferred advice. But they're saying basically you should make sure you have a backup before you close the period. And to do that, you would come into the closing screen. Just a little bit about this screen. We're in period 12 right now. Most of you probably have gone through year end already, depending if you have different fiscal periods. At year end, you have the option, At year end, you must select year to close the year. And what it will do at year end is literally close out your year-to-date income to your retained earnings. It's going to close out the expenses. It's going to move your balance forwards. It's going to do all of that work that it's supposed to do when you close a year. Okay, and depending on your GL setup, you should be able to post backward if you need to, if auditors come along with adjustments and so on, depending on your GL setup. If you close period, you can only do that from 1 through, and again, depending on whether you have 12 or 13 periods, sorry. Closing a period will just do all right, I'm just moving my balance forward. I'm closing the period, and then I'm moving forward, versus closing the year does all of that year-end work. The GL cannot be closed unless the sub-modules have been closed. The only caveat is Cash Manager can stay open. A lot of times you're ready to close your period before you're ready. Your bank statement hasn't come in yet. It will yell at you. It will say it doesn't like it, but you can do it. Like in this case, it shows the payroll is, 1 period ahead of everybody else, because it had to go ahead and start processing payroll, even though we're at year end. And inventory, that's not good. It's a month behind. So you would run this. You would change everything to year. Deleting your detail. Most people don't like to delete their detail, but if you decide to click that, it will go back to your GL setup screen, and based on those numbers you put in on how long to retain information. And you can do all of your modules at once if you click this, and it will depend on each setup screen as to what is actually removed from the system. So I can say not too often do people do this, but sometimes their databases get so large they need to consider it. But it is there if you want it. And I think once that's done, then you just start the next period. I think that's it for at this point in time for what I was going to show you. Does anybody have any questions, or would you like to see something? I do have one other thing I just thought of I can show you with SL 2011. I'm actually waiting for a question. That's what I was just thinking, Quick Query. Quick Query is a new tool that has come out with SL 2011. So again, it's not an SL7, but it is a new thing. And basically, it's a way of looking at the tables behind the scene without having to know how to type those sentences that have we do it in SQL Server. So with it, they've created a bunch of little views or screen selection statements that you can actually look at information on the screen as a query. I'm going to go in Financial. I'm going to go to General Ledger. And under the General Ledger, these are the ones way down here. Journal Transactions is actually your GL transaction screen. So if I go to here and I open up the screen, again, there's a lot to it, but this literally is showing me every batch, everything that has come into the GL. Okay? So let's say I want to look at just my period. If I click over here and I look for I'm not seeing period to post. All right. I will look for account is equal to 1030, which I know is cash. It's that quick that it just selected just where account is equal to. You can also do you can do even more selection. Like I could add what they call add a filter, and I can go further down. But you can see how quickly it sorted it. I could say and again I'm selecting from the screen where my period entered is equal to, or doesn't say equal to 1999-12. And that's everything. But you see how quick that was versus trying to use the other screen where I was trying to figure out what does everything mean. If you can also change, that okay, this says trans type, transaction type. You could change the name of that. Instead of journal type, you could call it module. You could rename things. I could add more fields. So if I say choose columns, I could say, well, I don't like everything they have, but I know there's more information I want. Like I was looking for period to post, and it wasn't even there. So to me, that's pretty important. So I would add that here, and then if I move it all the way up, because again, I consider that pretty important, and I say okay, and where'd it go? Well, I don't know what happened to my query. Let me just refresh. There we go. Okay. It's just like, okay. So I'll go back to, maybe because I had journal type. So it didn't allow me to add that. I think maybe there was too much to it. I wouldn't have thought that'd be a problem. Okay. Okay. And then if I go back to account. Okay, and add my filter. Where, and this time I could say my period to post is 129912. Oops, that is not a real period. Let's try that. 1999. There. So again, as you can see, it's faster than the other one. You still have the same options with being able to export it out. I could print the screen, I could export it to Excel, but it can be a lot faster than trying to run a GL detail report and then spitting it out and taking out your subtotal breaks and all of that stuff. You can, as I showed, you can remove columns, add columns, and so on. It's very powerful, very, very powerful. You can even, if you set up a brand new one, you could probably come through and save it as your own query. Like I could call this, you know, LS peer post for cash. At that point, I have my own. So I could load it the next time. It's almost like the same thing like a template where you can save it and reuse it so that you don't have to remember how did I get here the last time. And I see that there's a question. We're almost out of time. Is there anything remotely like this in the older version? No. GL detail reports, you doing your not within Solomon. I can think of ways you can do it, but the way you would do it would be using Excel and doing queries that way, an external type of query, but not within the system. Typically, the Crystal reports is what you're using. But if you have SL 2011, this quick query does come with it. And then, no, I was going to say there's nothing additional with an enhancement to it within Feature Pack 1 because it did come out with. Oh, wait a minute, there is something new. I'm trying to remember what it is. With Feature Pack 1, there's something additional where you can do with quick query. Business Analyzer. Shereen told me. His Business Analyzer. I knew there was something new. And I think you can write your own reports with it, if I remember correctly. As I said, it is a new version, and I haven't played with it too much, but I know that they're always come up with more and more and more enhancements. But pretty powerful stuff. So are there any other questions about the general ledger? I hope I've touched on everything that you had questions about or wanted to see. All right. Well, then I think that wraps it up. It looks like it's almost it's time to go. So I would like to say thank you for participating in our training today. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Just let us know if you have any questions, and have a good day.